Elsewhere, he leaves behind a legacy of torture and more than 100 alleged victims.
Imagine abusing your authority as a police officer, believing no one could challenge your power, only to meet someone who flips the script entirely. Corrupt cops like Len Davis thought they could cover up their crimes, but they underestimated the consequences of crossing the wrong people. Some, like Joseph Miedzianowski, faced life behind bars, while others, like Eppolito and Caracappa, didn't make it out of prison alive. What happens when corruption meets justice? Join us as we check out stories of corrupt officers who got what they deserved. Michael Dotro.
Your case is because Mr. Dotro, through his conduct and his admissions.
Our first story unfolds in New Jersey with Michael Dotro, who was once a promising officer in the Edison Police Department of New Jersey. With 17 years of service and numerous accolades, he was known for his dedication and bravery. However, beneath his polished image lay a different life, one filled with intimidation, revenge, and abuse of power that would eventually destroy his career. Dotro's aggressive behavior towards his colleagues and superiors became increasingly evident. He employed tactics ranging from subtle intimidation to outright threats, creating an environment of fear within the department. Those who challenged his authority found themselves on the receiving end of his wrath, a troubling departure from his duty as an officer. In May 2013, Dotro's reign of terror reached its peak.
The maximum sentence of 11 years for Pearson to serve in jail.
In a shocking act of revenge, he set fire to his superior officer's home while the captain and his family were asleep inside. The motive behind this heinous act was a simple disciplinary action at work. Fortunately, the captain's family managed to escape unharmed, but the incident triggered an investigation that would expose Dotro's web of corruption. The investigation revealed a disturbing pattern of criminal misconduct, like slashing a woman's tires in a fit of rage and buying marijuana while in uniform. Fellow officers who had long been silenced by fear began coming forward with their stories. Internal affairs investigations uncovered evidence that describes a man who believed himself above the law he had sworn to uphold. The thin blue line that had protected him began to crumble under the weight of mounting evidence. In 2017, justice finally caught up with Dotro. Facing multiple charges, he accepted a plea deal that resulted in a 20-year prison sentence.
In 2017, Dotro faced the consequences of his actions. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison.
Meanwhile, Dotro's tough sentence showed how badly he betrayed his duty. He was similar to the next corrupt cop, who also misused his police role to commit a wide range of crimes, Joseph Miedzianowski. He had a shining reputation during his 22 years with the Chicago Police Department.
Joe Miedzianowski. He was a very good cop. He could make good arrests.
His fellow officers admired his commitment, and his superiors praised his seemingly flawless record in the narcotics unit. However, behind this carefully crafted image was a criminal mastermind who earned the notorious title of Chicago's most corrupt cop. During the day, Miedzianowski served as a respected narcotics officer, but at night he ran an elaborate drug trafficking operation that spanned from Chicago to Miami. His position in law enforcement gave him the perfect cover. He used police resources to protect his drug dealers, made false arrests to eliminate competition, and even supplied his network with drugs seized by the police. Miedzianowski's criminal operation functioned like a well-oiled machine. He had a network of informants who were also drug dealers, using his authority to shield them from prosecution while taking a portion of their earnings. He tampered with police databases, warned dealers about upcoming raids, and provided them with surveillance equipment used by law enforcement. Miedzianowski's downfall began when one of his trusted associates became a whistleblower. This informant's testimony opened the door for federal agents to uncover a web of corruption that shocked even experienced investigators. Wiretaps revealed Miedzianowski's open discussions about drug deals, witness intimidation, and police corruption. Federal prosecutors constructed a strong case against him, presenting evidence of how he abused his police powers to facilitate drug trafficking, hinder investigations, and threaten witnesses. The trial revealed how he turned his police unit into a personal criminal operation, using his badge as a means for profit instead of protection. The verdict came quickly as he was found guilty on all charges. The judge sentenced Miedzianowski to life in prison, stating that his actions had betrayed everything the badge represents. His empire collapsed, taking down several accomplices along with it. The investigation resulted in multiple convictions and exposed systemic weaknesses in the oversight mechanisms of the Chicago Police Department. In 2020, Miedzianowski sought a sentence reduction under the First Step Act, but was denied. In 2022, two men, Juan and Rosendo Hernandez, whose murder convictions Miedzianowski had allegedly framed them for, had their convictions overturned and were granted a retrial. Their lawyer argued that another detective, Reynaldo Guevara, had framed the brothers at Miedzianowski's request. Reynaldo Guevara,
A former detective with the Chicago Police Department, left behind a trail of allegations involving the abuse of citizens and the violation of their trust.
Chicago has been haunted by stories of police misconduct for years, but the case of Reynaldo Guevara is among the most shocking. Detective Reynaldo Guevara built his reputation in Chicago's tough streets during the 1980s and 1990s. His impressive track record of solving high-profile murder cases earned him praise from superiors and media alike. Behind this facade of success lurked a dark truth that would take decades to unravel. Guevara's playbook of corruption read like a manual for police misconduct. He systematically coerced false confessions through physical violence and psychological manipulation. His tactics saw him threatening suspects' families, fabricating witness statements, and orchestrating false identifications in police lineups. These methods led to dozens of wrongful convictions, predominantly targeting Latino men in Chicago's northwest side. The first cracks in Guevara's carefully constructed web appeared when Jacques Rivera, who spent 21 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit, won his freedom in 2011. Rivera's case sparked a chain reaction. Investigative journalists from the Better Government Association and BuzzFeed News began digging deeper into Guevara's cases, uncovering a pattern of misconduct spanning decades. Their investigations revealed that at least 51 people claimed Guevara framed them, and there were multiple instances of witnesses being coached to identify specific suspects. The exposure gained momentum as more victims came forward. Juan Johnson, another wrongfully convicted individual, won a $21 million civil rights lawsuit against Guevara in 2009. The floodgates opened as courts began reviewing cases tied to the corrupt detective. When called to testify about his misconduct, Guevara repeatedly invoked his Fifth Amendment rights, refusing to answer questions about his investigative methods. This silence spoke volumes, leading judges to overturn conviction after conviction. The financial toll on Chicago continues to mount. The city has paid over $50 million in settlements related to Guevara's cases. His actions have destroyed countless lives and families torn apart by decades of wrongful imprisonment. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office maintains an ongoing review of his cases, with new exonerations emerging regularly. Despite the overwhelming evidence of his misconduct, Guevara has never faced criminal charges. He retired from the Chicago Police Department with a full pension, living freely while many of his victims spent years fighting to prove their innocence. A fate that many felt was unjust, given the lives he had ruined. While Guevara's corruption tore apart countless lives, let's shift focus to another corrupt cop. His justice wasn't as lenient as it was for Guevara, Len Davis. In the heart of New Orleans, a community that had long been familiar with the challenges of urban life was rocked to its core by the actions of Len Davis, a police officer whose abuse of power and deep involvement in corruption led to a grave miscarriage of justice. Behind his polished badge and uniform, Len Davis harbored a darkness that would send shockwaves through the New Orleans Police Department. A decorated officer on the surface, Davis twisted his authority into a weapon, using his position to orchestrate crimes rather than prevent them. Davis's reign of terror reached its peak in 1994 when he masterminded a chilling murder-for-hire scheme. His target was Kim Groves, a 32-year-old mother who had filed a brutal complaint against him for pistol-whipping a teenager. Davis saw her as a threat to his corrupt empire and decided she needed to be eliminated. The murder plot unfolded with calculated precision. Unknown to Davis, federal authorities had already placed him under surveillance for suspected drug trafficking. Through carefully placed wiretaps, investigators captured Davis's phone conversations with triggerman Paul Hardy. In a recording, Davis's voice rang clear, "Rockabye, baby." His cold-blooded signal confirming Groves' death. Within hours of filing her complaint, Kim Groves lay dead on a New Orleans street, shot in the head by Hardy while Davis orchestrated the hit from his police radio. The trial revealed Davis's true nature, a predator hiding behind a badge. His actions represented the ultimate betrayal of public trust, transforming from protector to executioner. The jury's verdict came swiftly as he was found guilty of civil rights violations, resulting in death. In a historic decision, Davis became the first law enforcement officer sentenced to death in the United States for crimes committed while on duty. Just 2 months later, the consequences of his actions were set to be carried out, marking the tragic end of a man who was once entrusted with the power to uphold the law. Now let's take a closer look at how another officer abused his position of power. Robert Smith. The pristine halls of Louisiana law enforcement once echoed with whispers of Robert Smith's potential. A rising star in the Shreveport Police Department, Smith's career trajectory painted the picture of an ambitious officer destined for greatness. His stellar arrest record and commendations masked a dark reality that would shake the foundations of Louisiana's criminal justice system. Robert Smith, infamously known as the most corrupt cop, was a seasoned officer who mastered the art of wrongdoing, using his position within the NYPD to engage in a wide range of criminal activities. His actions seriously damaged the reputation of the police department and made the public trust the police even less. Behind his badge lay a web of corruption that stretched across state lines. Smith orchestrated an intricate drug trafficking operation, using his position to protect shipments while simultaneously targeting innocent civilians. His tactics included planting evidence on unsuspecting victims, many of whom spent years behind bars for crimes they never committed. Smith's operation grew increasingly bold as he expanded his network. He manipulated crime scene evidence, falsified police reports, and coerced false confessions from vulnerable suspects. His badge became a shield for criminal enterprises, allowing him to operate with impunity while maintaining the facade of a dedicated law enforcement officer. The house of cards began to crumble when local journalist Sarah Martinez received an anonymous tip about discrepancies in several high-profile drug cases. Her investigation uncovered patterns of suspicious arrests, all leading back to Smith. Working alongside brave whistleblowers from within the department, Martinez pieced together a damning narrative of corruption. 2 fellow officers, risking their careers and safety, came forward with crucial evidence. They provided recordings of Smith discussing drug shipments and documented instances of evidence tampering. Their testimony proved instrumental in building a federal case against him. The FBI's subsequent investigation revealed the true scope of Smith's crimes as he made $3.5 million in drug proceeds. His actions resulted in 27 falsely imprisoned individuals. The federal trial exposed Smith's elaborate scheme to the world. Prosecutors presented evidence of his involvement in trafficking cocaine and heroin across state lines, while simultaneously framing innocent citizens to deflect suspicion from his operations. The judge handed down a 97-month sentence, swingingly citing the devastating impact of Smith's actions on public trust and the lives of those wrongfully convicted. If you think you've seen it all when it comes to corrupt cops, just wait until we expose what this officer and his partner did that brought them to a devastating end. Louis Eppolito and Stephen Caracappa.
2 cops who were hitmen for the mob. I mean, it was not like anything that we had ever seen before.
The streets of New York City witnessed a betrayal so profound it shattered the thin blue line separating law enforcement from organized crime. Louis Eppolito and Stephen Caracappa, 2 decorated NYPD detectives, orchestrated one of the most shocking cases of police corruption in American history. These mafia cops built sterling reputations within the NYPD. Eppolito, son of a Gambino crime family member, authored a book about fighting the mob's influence. Caracappa earned respect as a founding member of the NYPD's organized crime homicide unit. Their badges were masked with a different reality as they secretly worked as hitmen for the Lucchese crime family. Their criminal enterprise stretched beyond murder for hire. The corrupt duo leaked confidential police information to mob bosses, participated in drug trafficking operations, conducted surveillance on potential mob targets, kidnapped individuals for mob executions, and accepted payments of $4,000 monthly plus bonuses for murders. Their reign of terror lasted from 1986 to 1990, with at least 8 confirmed murders linked to their activities. The pair used their police credentials to stop victims' vehicles, making their targets easy prey for mob hit squads. Their downfall began when they crossed paths with determined federal prosecutors and former mob members seeking redemption. Burton Kaplan, a former drug dealer turned informant, provided crucial testimony detailing the officer's relationship with Anthony Gaspipe Casso, the Lucchese family's underboss. The 2005 trial revealed shocking details of their crimes, as the federal prosecutor said. They were not traditional mob associates. They were much worse. They used their badges as licenses to kill. The evidence proved overwhelming. Surveillance footage, wiretapped conversations, and testimony from multiple mob turncoats painted a clear picture of their disloyalty. The jury convicted both men on all counts, including racketeering, obstruction of justice, drug trafficking, and 8 counts of murder. The judge handed down life sentences plus 80 years to each former detective, marking their transformation from respected law enforcement officers to symbols of ultimate corruption. By 2009, both men were dead, having spent their final years incarcerated. This scandal revealed the deep corruption in law enforcement. But another cop's story goes even further, taking betrayal to a darker level. Rafael Perez. In 1999, LAPD officer Rafael Perez was arrested, leading to a series of revelations known as the Rampart Scandal. As a member of the elite crash unit, which is community resources against street hoodlums, Perez's downfall exposed a culture of corruption within the department's Rampart division. Perez's illegal actions resemble those found in a Hollywood crime thriller. He orchestrated elaborate schemes to steal cocaine from LAPD evidence lockers, often reselling it on the streets through a network of dealers. His badge became a tool for intimidation, allowing him to frame innocent individuals and fabricate evidence at will. The corruption ran deep as Perez and his fellow officers routinely planted weapons on unarmed suspects, wrote false reports, and unleashed excessive force on the communities they were sworn to protect. The investigation into missing cocaine from the evidence room led to a sting operation that caught Perez in the act, resulting in his arrest for stealing 8 pounds of cocaine. Faced with serious charges, Perez made a calculated decision that would shake the LAPD to its core. He struck a plea deal. In exchange for a lighter sentence, Perez became an informant. His testimony revealed systematic abuse within the Rampart division and implicated numerous officers in misconduct. This prompted one of the largest investigations into police corruption in American history. The consequences of Perez's testimony were significant, as over 100 criminal convictions were overturned. The LAPD paid millions of dollars in civil settlements. Over 70 officers faced investigation. The entire crash unit was disbanded, and the department was placed under federal oversight. While Rafael Perez exposed the LAPD's corruption, the next cop's actions revealed an entirely different kind of horror within the Chicago Police Department. John Burge.
Would you state your name, sir?
John G. Burge, B-U-R-G.
Former Chicago Police Commander John Burge broke the law when he was supposed to uphold it.
John Burge, a former detective and commander in the Chicago Police Department, became the notorious leader of a group of officers known as the Midnight Crew. This squad gained infamy for its brutal and inhumane interrogation tactics, which included electric shocks, suffocation with plastic bags or typewriter covers, and even mock executions. From 1972 to 1991, Burge orchestrated a reign of terror at Area 2 Police Headquarters, earning it the nickname the House of Screams. His primary targets were African-American men from Chicago's South Side. Under his command, detectives extracted false confessions through these barbaric methods, leading to wrongful convictions that would take decades to overturn. The wall of silence protecting Burge began to crack in 1982, when Andrew Wilson's severe injuries caught the attention of public defender Dale Coventry. Wilson's body bore unmistakable signs of torture, like burns, cuts, and electrical marks that couldn't be explained away as routine police handling. A group of determined activists, including the People's Law Office and Citizens Alert, launched relentless campaigns to expose Burge's crimes. Their persistence attracted investigative journalists who uncovered patterns of abuse spanning nearly 2 decades. Survivors began stepping forward. Their stories depict a systematic torture sanctioned by police leadership. The FBI's investigation in the 1990s revealed the extent of Burge's operation. Multiple officers confirmed his use of a device dubbed the black box, a hand-cranked generator used to deliver electric shocks to suspects. Despite mounting evidence, the statute of limitations for torture had expired by the time these crimes came to light. Justice finally caught up with Burge in 2010, though not for the torture itself. Federal prosecutors secured a conviction for perjury and obstruction of justice after he lied under oath about his knowledge of torture. The 4.5-year sentence he received seemed insufficient compared to the decades of trauma he inflicted. Now it's time for Subscriber's Pick. A scene unfolds in the heart of the forest as a man is seen in the picture, shirtless and terrifying, holding a chain while a restrained officer sits helplessly in the chair. This isn't your typical face-off. This is a moment where justice takes an unexpected turn. Could this be one of the shocking tales from our exploration of corrupt cops who met the wrong person? But what drives someone to confront an officer in such a way? Is it vengeance, or is there more to the story? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Meanwhile, if you think the story of dirty cops ends here, think again. Now let's explore the story of a female New Orleans police officer. Antoinette Frank. Antoinette Frank, a police officer, committed heinous acts that revealed the darkest side of the New Orleans Police Department. While her badge represented authority and protection, it concealed a violent nature within her. Frank's path to becoming a police officer began with promising signs. In 1993, she successfully passed the police examination and earned her badge despite initial psychological evaluations raising concerns about her stability. Beneath her uniform, Frank harbored a calculating criminal mind. To supplement her income as a police officer, she took on a second job as a security guard at Kim An's Vietnamese restaurant. This arrangement allowed her to establish connections with the restaurant owners and staff, giving her access to valuable information. On March 4, 1995, Frank's true intentions were revealed. Alongside her accomplice, Rogers Lacaze, she executed a meticulously planned robbery at the restaurant. The situation escalated violently when Frank killed Officer Ronald Williams II, her fellow police colleague who was also working security that night. She then turned her weapon on Ha and Quang Vu, siblings who worked at the restaurant and had previously shown her kindness. In an attempt to evade suspicion, Frank returned to the crime scene as a responding officer, pretending to investigate the very murders she had committed. However, Quoc Vu, the victim's sibling who had hidden during the attack, recognized her immediately and provided crucial testimony that would ultimately seal her fate. The investigation into the murders uncovered unsettling aspects of Frank's character, as she had stolen from the restaurant during previous security shifts and multiple complaints about her aggressive behavior had been filed but ignored. As investigators explored the case, they discovered compelling evidence that the murder weapon was identified as Frank's service revolver, and security cameras captured her suspicious movements around the time of the murders. After careful deliberation, a jury found Frank guilty in less than 45 minutes. At just 23 years old, she became the first female law enforcement officer in the United States to receive a death sentence, and is currently awaiting execution at the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women. While Frank's sentence marked the end of one chapter of corruption, the story of police misconduct did not end there. Wayne Jenkins. Baltimore comes alive with stories of an elite police unit that operated above the law. At its helm stood Wayne Jenkins, a decorated sergeant whose leadership of the Gun Trace Task Force, GTTF, masked a criminal enterprise that would shake the Baltimore Police Department to its core. Jenkins cultivated an image of a dedicated crime fighter, earning praise for his unit's impressive statistics in gun and drug seizures. Behind this facade lies a mastermind who transformed his badge into a license for systematic robbery, extortion, and evidence manipulation. His criminal record speaks of him conducting illegal searches and seizures, stealing cash and drugs from suspects, planting evidence to justify arrests, and reselling confiscated drugs back onto the streets. the GTTF's reign of terror targeted both criminals and innocent citizens alike. Jenkins orchestrated elaborate schemes, including robbing a high-stakes poker game and stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from Baltimore residents. His unit would often track drug dealers, waiting for them to make sales before swooping in to steal their profits. The FBI's investigation revealed Jenkins' sophisticated operation extended beyond simple theft. He trained his officers in techniques to evade detection, including using sophisticated tracking devices and creating false probable cause for stops. His confidence grew so bold that he even robbed a safe containing $200,000 during the 2015 Baltimore riots. The breaking point came when fellow officers began cooperating with federal investigators. Detective Maurice Ward's testimony described a damning picture of Jenkins's leadership, showing how the unit would carry BB guns to plant on suspects in case they needed to justify shootings. In 2018, Jenkins received a 25-year prison sentence. While Jenkins' case showed how deep police corruption can go, it's not the only example. Los Angeles has also faced its own issues with police misconduct. David Mack. This cop's transformation from a respected LAPD officer to a bank robber reads like a Hollywood crime thriller. His 1997 bank heist netted $722,000, shocking the law enforcement community and exposing deep-rooted corruption within the LAPD's ranks. Mack's journey into law enforcement started promisingly. He earned respect as an accomplished college athlete before joining the LAPD in 1989. His physical prowess and street smarts quickly earned him assignments to elite units. Behind this show of excellence, Mack cultivated dangerous connections with death row records and the infamous Blood Street Gang. The bank robbery that ended his police career demonstrated professional precision. Mack used his law enforcement expertise to orchestrate the perfect heist, disabling security systems and coordinating getaway routes. His intimate knowledge of police procedures helped him evade capture initially, but his lavish spending habits raised red flags. The FBI's investigation revealed Mack's connections to death row records and his suspected role in the murder of Christopher Wallace, notorious B.I.G. Though never charged with the murder, investigators uncovered evidence linking him to the crime scene through his black Chevrolet Impala SS, matching witness descriptions. His downfall accelerated when fellow officers noticed his suspicious behavior. Mack's unexplained wealth, frequent absences, and known associations with criminal elements drew attention. The investigation intensified after he purchased a Mercedes-Benz with cash and hosted extravagant parties. The court sentenced Mack to 14 years in federal prison. His case sparked intense scrutiny of the LAPD's hiring practices and oversight mechanisms. The department implemented stricter background checks and monitoring systems for officers with potential gang affiliations. However, he wasn't the only one to betray trust. Let's rewind the hands of time to see how this next corrupt officer went on to commit his crimes. Charles Becker. In the early 1900s, police corruption was rampant in New York City, with Charles Becker at the center of it all. As an NYPD lieutenant in charge of the Strong Arm Squad, Becker's rise to power concealed a dark operation that would ultimately lead to his dramatic downfall. Becker, a lieutenant with the New York City Police Department in the 1890s and early 1900s, became the center of one of the most infamous scandals in American law enforcement history. His career was marked by a variety of corrupt behaviors, from involvement in illegal gambling to deep ties with organized crime. He had connections with notorious gangsters, including the infamous Jack Legs Diamond, making him a key figure in the underworld of the time. Becker's downfall began with the murder of Herman Rosenthal, a bookmaker who had threatened to expose the widespread corruption within the police force that enabled his gambling operations to thrive. On the night of July 16, 1912, Rosenthal was shot in cold blood near Times Square, moments after leaving a hotel where he had gone seeking protection from the very police officers who were supposed to protect him, including Becker. The investigation that followed quickly revealed that Becker had ordered the hit on Rosenthal, fearing that Rosenthal's testimony would reveal his involvement in the corruption. The trial that followed Becker's arrest became a national sensation, capturing the public's attention across the country. Becker was convicted of first-degree murder, a landmark verdict that marked the first time in United States history that a police officer was sentenced to death for murder. In 1916, Becker was executed in the electric chair, his legacy permanently marked by the brutal crime he masterminded. While Becker's execution ended one chapter of corruption, the legacy of abuse of power within law enforcement continued, as seen in the case of a Chicago police sergeant, Ronald Watts. This story is notably a prime example of police corruption in Chicago's public housing communities. Ronald Watts, a sergeant in the Chicago Police Department, abused his authority to oppress vulnerable residents in the Ida B. Wells housing project, using tactics such as extortion, false arrests, and intimidation. Watts' reign lasted over 10 years, during which he led a tactical team that regularly planted drugs on innocent residents who refused to pay protection money. Those who couldn't or wouldn't pay faced wrongful arrests, while those who complied watched their neighborhoods decline under Watts' corrupt leadership. The first signs of Watts' corruption began to emerge when Officer Shannon Spaulding noticed troubling patterns in his team's operations. Despite facing immense pressure and retaliation from fellow officers, Spaulding collaborated with federal investigators to expose Watts' criminal activities. The investigation unveiled a shocking series of civil rights violations committed by Watts and his team against hundreds of vulnerable citizens in Chicago. They threatened citizens with a popular line, "If you don't pay up, you're going to jail." The consequences of Watts' corruption continue to impact Chicago's justice system today. So far, over 100 convictions linked to Watts have been overturned, with many more under review. Each exoneration represents years of lost freedom for innocent individuals caught up in his web of corruption. Watts's eventual conviction and 22-month federal prison sentence barely scratched the surface of the harm he caused. The true cost lies in the broken trust between law enforcement and Chicago's communities, especially in neighborhoods already grappling with poverty and crime. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.